Elon Musk, of course, is known for edgy behavior online, right? That's nothing new. Anyone who followed the, funding secured brouhaha of 5 years ago knows that. Since acquiring Twitter, renaming it X, he has verged into, I'd say, hard right, kind of ultra conservative territory. And before this week, had made some cracks that were kind of pretty close to anti-Semitic or like playing with anti-Semitic tropes. But what changed this week was, an explicit embrace of an anti-Semitic theory. And so I mean, it is surprising, as you said. I mean, he's the wealthiest man in the world. He runs the largest car company. He runs a major defense contractor. I mean, needless to say, not behavior you expect out of somebody of that stature.
And Max, what's interesting to me is X now a private company. You have IBM, you have Lionsgate suspending their advertisements on the platform. What can investors or just general companies really do to hit back at Musk, given his stature and given his prominence in a range of companies?
So we talked about this last night on the Elon Inc. podcast. We did a emergency episode to discuss this. And, the thing is, this company, X, Twitter, has spent months basically doing damage control over Elon Musk's posts, right? Elon Musk had this kind of much touted meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu, where he, the leader of Israel, where he deplored, he condemned anti-Semitism. He's done a bunch of interviews where he's sort of attempted to essentially like clean up the damage. We've even seen Linda Yaccarino say stuff, including yesterday. But of course, it kind of undermines the effort that this company is making when the boss is also the one tweeting the hate speech. And so as a result, right, this is very bad for X Twitter's business. They were already losing advertisers, even without the kind of edgy or even racist behavior of the CEO. There were questions about this company's long-term viability. And now seeing Apple, IBM, Lionsgate, and you have to think that more may come. That is going to make that position even trickier. Now, as you said, it's a private company, right? Musk can go on losing as much money as he wants, but it does owe, huge amounts of money to investors. That could be at play. And I think the really more interesting question is, what does this do to demand for Tesla?
No, that's a really great point. And by the way, I just wanted to do a shameless plug here because, Max, you mentioned the Elon Inc. Emergency podcast. You can listen and subscribe to Elon Inc. on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, and, of course, the Bloomberg Terminal. I'm glad you mentioned that, of course, Tesla and the connection there, because Tesla shares were moving on all these headlines related to Elon Musk. And it's worth noting that Tesla margins are declining. Tesla is trying to do what it can to boost sales. Revenue at X is also plummeting. SpaceX has had some kind of negative headlines. They're going to launch their deep space Starship rocket system this weekend. But 7 months ago, they had their first major test flight end explosively in midair. Is Elon Musk frustrated and this is how it's coming out? Is that maybe part of the story?
I don't know. I think, first of all, number one, I think it's sort of dangerous to try to start coming up with excuses for, racist behavior. I don't know if he's frustrated or not. There's certainly reasons, I suppose, for him to feel frustrated. What I think is there have been challenges to Tesla all this year, and it's been unclear how much of those are connected to sort of broader economic issues, right? Interest rates going up, very bad for car companies because a lot of people finance their cars. So that could potentially hit demand. There are these competitive companies that are coming online, selling more and more cars. That's a problem. But I do think Elon Musk, his core audience, when you think of who's the core audience for Tesla, the typical electric car buyer, it's like a middle-class person, often somebody left of center. It is not somebody for whom, edgy, meme lord antics on the internet is necessarily going to be a huge appeal. And I think we've seen this weird thing happen where Elon Musk, as he's gotten deeper in social media, has embraced this different persona, and it's not necessarily one that's going to be helpful for selling cars or operating a massive rocket company. And when I look at the causes, what I see is kind of similar to what a lot of people go through. People will probably be going through this at their Thanksgiving table, right? You spend a lot of time on the internet, and sometimes people go down rabbit holes. And when you look at Elon Musk's mentions, his replies, who he's been talking to a lot of people on the far right. And I think this is kind of the result.